Oh no. Okay. All right, we are live. All right, I guess we're live. I don't have the fancy intro this week for some reason. So here we go. I
Let's do
am
it.
Dreamy David Barr. As you noticed, King Mike L is not here this week. So we have Sin Trader Hill hanging out with me. Now, HR says that Mike is out on assignment, and I'm calling BS on that. If you've been
Yeah.
watching the last few weeks, you know that Mike has been accusing me of living at the studio, which is not true. I just work well here. It's a better setup for me. Now, you may have also noticed that the puppets have not been on in a long time. And rumor has it they're really upset about their lack of airtime. And they figured out that Mike's been coming to the studio to try to catch me living here. So earlier today, allegedly, they were waiting for him, and they issued an epic beatdown to King Mike L. And that is why he's not here with us tonight. Now, we have the security footage. I've asked Buddy to review it and let me know if this is true. I have not heard anything yet. But we want whatever's going on. Mike, if you're on assignment, I hope you're investigating an awesome story. If you got beat up by the puppets, I know there's like a ton of those things, and it's hard to fend them all off at once. So if that's the case, I hope you're okay. Sin, what do you think?
Oh, you got to watch out for those things. I
Yeah.
mean, they're vicious, and they're after him. Oh, he's toast. He's toast.
They want their airtime back. So, I don't
You
know.
got to give it to him.
If you guys want to see the puppets, you got to let us know. Tell King Mike Al to bring them back. All right? For the math geeks, I'm sorry. Numbers are Mike's thing. They're not mine, so I don't have a number thing for you. Hopefully he'll be back next week, and he'll do a ×2 for you or something like that. Sin, what do you have for a story tonight?
Well, first off, let's talk about dolls.
All right.
All right?
We talking creepy dolls here?
Yeah, let's go creepy because I don't like dolls. I used to collect them, but not so much. Not so much. But these people took it just a little bit too far. So you've got a man named Karl Tanzler from Germany, from Dresden, Germany. He was born back in the 1800s and lived to be, let's see, well, he lived until 1952 in Key West, Florida. So he moved from Germany. He went south down even to Australia, from what I understand, up into Italy, and just all the, back and forth. Ended up in the Key West area as a microbiologist and a bacteriologist. So people would come to him for cures and things like that. And back in the day, around, I don't know, the late 20s, early 30s, there was a big TB scare. And a particular girl came in who he fell in love with immediately. She was much younger than him. Her name is Maria Elena Milagro de Hoyos. So she's Cuban American.
That's
right?
quite the name.
Right. Yeah, it's a great name. He called her Elena, and she had tuberculosis. They were a poor family. Her mother had brought her in. Interestingly enough, he told people earlier on, before he met her, that years ago when he was younger, he had gotten a visit from a long dead ancestor, one of his aunts, and she had provided this vision of the woman that he was going to marry. When he saw Elena, it looked just like the vision that his aunt had given him. All right.
It's crazy.
So he's in love with this chick. She's much younger than him. He's given her gifts. He's trying to cure her, even offering to come to her home to do treatments. It's okay with the family. They allow him because they're poor, and he's doing everything he can. So here we go. She ends up dying the next year. Now, she never, ever reciprocated his feelings, ever. She was actually married before, and her husband ran out on her when she miscarried their only child. So she was actually still married at this point and never wanted to get married again. Carl Tanzler wasn't taking that as a no, so he kept helping and helping, and well, she died anyway. So he offered the family to pay for the funeral expenses and even build an above ground mausoleum in the Key West Cemetery. So he paid for all this, and he made sure he had the only key to the mausoleum.
So
Let's fast forward a little bit. Now
okay.
he would visit her every night. And then he got to thinking, oh, she really would be more comfortable at home. So he moved her body without her family's consent. Her family had no idea this was going on. This was 2 years after she died. He moved her body via a toy wagon to his home. He brought her into his bed. As she was decaying more and more every day, he would apply these silk scarves and all these different fine fabrics that were dipped in wax and paraffin and just perfumed like crazy, so it would cover up any stench there was. Later on, it was found that she even had a paper tube inserted into her nether region so he could perform a little sexual activity there. So all this is going on. Her sister finally gets wind of it somehow. She comes to his place and says, I hear you have my sister here. He said, oh, yeah, you can come see her. So he brings her into his home, into the bedroom, shows her Elena, and says, you can visit her whenever you'd like, thinking, this is not a problem. This is not a problem.
Totally nothing wrong with this at all.
Yeah, he was thinking that, right? So they tried to bring him up on charges. It was past the statute of limitations for this. He didn't kill her.
I get the feeling there should not be a statute of limitations for this. So, I mean,
I'm thinking, yeah.
he robbed a grave. He's practicing
Necrophilia.
He
Yeah,
basically turned her into like a high-end mummy /
exactly.
sex doll,
Yeah.
and all without the family knowing this.
All without the family knowing. And see, he was thinking if he was paying for everything else, they would appreciate that and understand from their perspective that he was just a nice guy that wanted to marry her. That's all. He just
Yeah.
wanted a girlfriend. So anyway, he lived a couple of years on, and even though he was moved away from his love, they actually buried her in an unmarked grave, so people cannot find her anymore. She's still in Key West somewhere or in the vicinity, but in an unmarked grave, so no one else can bother her. Let the poor lady rest. But he built a death mask after the fact so that he could continue his relationship in the way he wanted to. So death mask, this effigy of this woman that he loved, and he was actually found dead at the foot of this effigy. So, people said, oh, he was probably hugging on her and loving on her at the time and just had a heart attack. Who knows? But that's the first part of the story. Now fast forward, right?
Okay.
To 2011, over in Russia, there's a guy called Anatoly Moskvin. He was born in 66. Now that makes him 57 this September. He's still alive.
Okay.
This guy didn't want a girlfriend. He didn't want to get married. He didn't want to date. He didn't, nothing like that. But he wanted a child. He wanted a little girl specifically. And he was one of the most brilliant people in the area. He was a linguist. He was, gosh, he had so many things going on. He wrote for newspapers just often, like twice a month, he would put in these newspapers. He taught, he could speak 13 languages. And I mean, just brilliant, brilliant. But he had a problem. He enjoyed cemeteries, he enjoyed funerals and going to see people and that kind of thing. And again, he wanted a daughter. Now, he lived with his mother and father, never moved
I don't
out.
like where this is going, Sin.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first one he decides to bring home, he dug her up, brings her back. He stuffs her with rags so, she's got a full body instead of starting to cave in. He does the plaster of Paris. He does the just different things to keep her. Even use nail polish and makeup, paint on her face to give her a more realistic look as she was sinking away. Never had sex with these, right? Never had sex with her because he wanted a child. Ended up, a few years later, he had 26 of these girls, aged 3 up.
That's disgusting.
And it's unclear as to the fact as if any of those 26 had a full body left in them. But there were 26 girls. The parents saw them. They were in his apartment, on sofas, on the bed, just stacked up sitting like in a tea party atmosphere, in the garage, everywhere. They thought they were dolls because he collected dolls.
Right, right.
The parents thought they couldn't smell this stuff. What the hell is going on here? I mean, to me, there's not enough perfume to cover up that kind of stuff. What do you think?
Oh, I'm with you. That must have smelled like horrible. The most disgusting smell ever.
Absolutely. And do you know that he is still in a psychiatric hospital? They deemed him incompetent, so they keep bringing him up as questioning, is he fit? Now in 2000, let's see, I think it was 2018, they said, you know what? I think he's cured. I think we've done enough for him. Let's let him go. And then the next year, they rescinded that. They had another eval done, and they were like, no,
Right.
This guy's not ready to come out. No.
There's a thing they say, like these super genius people often have a little something wrong with them. There's something off. So
Right.
this happened to be his oddity, I guess.
Yeah, but this was tended on the schizophrenic, the what did they call it? The paranoid schizophrenia. He bordered on that and just got stuck in it.
I'm still stuck on like having 26 bodies in the house and the smell. Like there's not enough Febreze in the world to cover that up.
Did you ever see the movie Seven?
Yes.
Do you remember them going into the sloth scene with all those Christmas trees hanging from the ceiling? Those wouldn't even cover it up.
Yeah. This, I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, there are people that are off, and then there are people that are off.
Yeah.
This guy was off.
Way off.
Yeah.
Way off. Yeah. Now, these stories actually came from a really good friend of mine, his book, The Darkest Corner, Mark Elliott Foltz. So if you want to read more about dolls, that's where
Awesome.
you can take it up with him and read more about all kinds of dolls, not just these.
Maybe some of these people would like some puppets.
You know, I'm thinking, yeah.
Give them something to do
I'm
besides,
thinking, yeah.
you know, keeping Mike off the show.
Right. Right.
I don't know. We'll have to talk about that off air. See if we can work
Okay.
something out.
All right.
Maybe
All
the
right.
puppets will be interested. I don't know. It's
I think
company
they would.
company for them. Something to do. Maybe they'll end up in a book,
It,
right?
I'm thinking yeah, let's do it. Let's
All
do
right.
it. There has to be a Southern Belle one.
Okay.
Is there a Southern Belle puppet?
I have not seen a Southern Belle puppet just yet, but
Lord,
I'm
I bet
sure there's
she
there's one out there.
I bet she sounds just like this. And I bet she would say, Mike, now y'all come back. Y'all come back. You're so missed. Don't you think?
I reckon you'd be right, ma'am. All right. Thank you. That was some interesting stuff there. Uh, I never need to see those things in my life.
Oh, but you can. Oh,
I
but you can. You
could.
can
I mean,
actually see pictures of these.
I've been to the Museum of Death in California, and
I
I've
want to.
seen things that, like, they had shrunken heads. They had the preserved head of the first person who was beheaded by a guillotine in France.
Wow.
That thing was creepy because I felt like it was almost talking to me. I felt this pressure in my head, and I was trying to make out, like, some kinda thoughts that were coming through, and I mentioned that to the curators of the museum, and they said, "Yeah, that thing tries to communicate with people every so often." So
Wow.
I wasn't the first person to get some kinda creepy vibe and have it try to communicate with me.
Yeah, you
I
just
know
got
other people
picked as
have
one
had
of the
that.
lucky ones.
Yeah, I guess so. Something like that, though. Um, is that what all you got for us this week, Sin?
That's all. I think that's enough, don't you?
I do.
Uh,
Um, I have a quick UFO story before we bring on our UFO expert. Okay. So this story just came to light a couple weeks ago, and on April 21st, 2021, an unidentified triangular shaped object with 5 red lights was witnessed and caught over it was caught on video at Camp Wilson in 29 Palms, California. Now, at least 50 Marines serving at the base saw this thing, and a bunch of them recorded it hovering in the sky for about 10 minutes, and then it vanished without a trace. Um, they all said they'd never seen anything like this before, and that it was completely different in color and size and illumination than what they call illumination rounds. So an illumination round is kind of like a giant flare that they shoot up into the sky, and when the blast from when the mortar explodes, the blast lights up a targeted area. So if they're fighting at night or they need to scout out an area at night, they'll fire these more illumination rounds up in the air to create the light they need to see what they're doing and to see if there's any enemies in the territory. Um, so they said this was like 5 lights next to each other, and they were kind of reddish in color, and their illumination rounds are more of a yellow white color. So it couldn't have been around. And also, they fire one round in the sky at the time, so they wouldn't be firing 5 off at once. So that was different about this too. Uh, so a bunch of Marines had their smartphones, they're shooting footage, they're showing the 5 lights arranged in a triangular formation, and they're saying that it kind of was like the Phoenix Lights, if you're familiar with that, which there was a giant triangular UFO that flew over the city of Phoenix. So now the Marines are saying after these sightings, dozens of trucks, multiple helicopters, they're rushing to the location. Helicopters are flying overhead. It's like 11:30 p.m. at night. Um, and they're still reporting these peculiar things circling around. They did eventually fire illumination rounds over the UFO, and a Marine did capture this in a video. I'm kind of anxious to see some of this video. I want to see this thing. Um, so they're estimating the size of the unidentified object about the size of a stealth bomber. So it's got a wingspan of 172 feet, or it's the equivalent to the size of a 3-bedroom house and half the size of a football field. So this thing's pretty big if it's
Wow.
half the size of a football field. So depending on who you ask, that's how they estimated the size. Um, Again, this was kind of like the Phoenix Lights, which happened in 1997. Hundreds of people saw that thing over Arizona, including then Governor Fife Symington. And so the witnesses involved, they're struggling to explain this thing. They're baffled. They're still trying to make sense of what they saw. As far as they know, no contact was made with this UFO, and officials from Camp Wilson have not made any public comments regarding the incident. I think it's interesting that they say, as far as we know, no contact was made with this UFO, which leads me to believe there may have been some contact or some kind of communication tried to occur between these things. I don't know. So I just find it interesting, um, especially since these are Marines reporting this. So it's not some, Joe Bob out in the woods somewhere by himself. This is at least 50 Marines. They're all reporting the same thing. A bunch of them took video of this thing. So something happened. Something flew over that night. What it is, who knows? I find that stuff fascinating.
I do too. And it's starting to happen a lot more lately.
Right. Yeah, more and
There's
more
been a
people.
lot of
And I think with, everybody's got basically a high def camera in their pockets now. So it's easier to capture video of these things. Um, so who knows? Government officials have said that we could have contact by the year 2029. Uh, it's bizarre to me that they're opening up and talking about these things too, because everything was
yeah,
always so secretive.
yeah.
And now they're it's almost as if they're trying to prepare us for something that's coming or that's going to happen.
Mhm.
So that's what I got. I'm anxious to hear what Gene's going to say about this. So let's bring Gene on. Gene, how are you?
Hi, everybody. Hi,
Hello.
Sin.
Welcome to
Hi,
the
Hi.
Dreamy
show.
Dave. I, of course, have an opinion about the Phoenix Lights incident. It's chapter 10, the final chapter in my top 10
Yes.
definitive U.S. UFO cases. It occurred the last day of March 1997. And there were actually two incidents. I don't know if you can see this or not, but there were two separate sightings. There was a large V shaped craft, which is what most people think of this episode, but there are also flare-like many smaller lights seen all around this area overnight, including the governor, as you said, who at first admitted and then recanted after, guess who, Big Brother squeezed on him, pressed on him, and then he did a double take or a double return after he left office. What, 12 years later or something? He said it really did happen. so so it actually really did happen. And if you want to check it out, it's really the last. It's significant. It made this book because it's a mass sighting seen by so many people, both civilian scientists, lay people with no interest at all in paranormal phenomenon of any kind, and including famous people such as film star Kurt Russell, who was flying his private plane with his son as his passenger, adult son. They spotted this light where it shouldn't be. It was big. They got closer. It's bright. Radio the tower at the Phoenix airport, and no, it's not supposed to be there. We see it too, but it's not supposed to. It's uncharted. We don't know what it is or who it is. So
So, Gene,
There was no incident there. But what's interesting about his case is that he forgot. He had this amnesia, which is very typical with
yeah,
sightings and objections as well. And I won't belabor the point because I have another topic. But go ahead,
it's like
Dave.
Men in Black where they flash that little thing
The
and
flashy
it
thingy.
wipes their
Yeah, the
memories.
flashy thingy.
So, Gene, I just did a story about from just over 2 years ago. We have at least 50 Marines at Camp Wilson in 29 Palms, California, saying they saw a ship that's very similar to the one that appeared during the Phoenix Lights incident. And they
Yeah,
have
well, a lot of them
video
look
from
like
their
that.
phones and
They're
stuff.
big, enormous V-shaped craft. They may be pyramids. Remember, I did that one
Yes.
a
Yep.
month or so ago. That we see if we're seeing only the bottom of something, it might be pyramidal on top. And these flying pyramids are a thing that's very interesting as well. Uh, you mentioned how come all of a sudden, as of 2020, the Pentagon is fessing up and saying, yeah, there are UFOs. Now we're going to call them unidentified aerial phenomena, though,
Yeah.
because we want to obfuscate. That's what we do. Meaning muddy the waters of understanding. Everybody knows what a UFO is, but hardly anybody knows what a UAP is, unidentified aerial phenomenon. So they can talk about it in public discourse. Nobody really cares. Whereas UFO, it's such a hot button. People have opinions about it. Either there's no such thing, there can't be. You got to be crazy to believe in that stuff,
Right.
which is the rest of my family. Or I can allow, as a scientist, I can allow for the possibility, or as a metaphysicist, I can allow for the possibility, or just as an open-minded person, I can allow for the possibility. The allow for the possibilities kind of have it in the majority at this point of history, I think, which is why when they do public opinion polls, such as they are, that more and more and more people say, yeah, I'd be good. I'd be fine with the existence of UFOs. But the thing is, the verb tense is wrong. This is not conditional if they showed up. They are here. They have been here. They bioengineered us. The whole story is very plain, clear, well documented in historic documents that are well vetted as being true and not made up. This is a complex long tale that I document quite often in presentations and future books. A lot of people love human origin stories, which trace back to UFOs. And guess what? Biggest cover up of the 20th century has changed our lives as we know them, sucked now trillions of dollars out of the US budget and global budgets everywhere. It's insane how much money has gone into making people believe that UFOs are not real. And now we see the Pentagon saying, well, yeah, they are. But since we don't know what drives them, in fact, they're saying that the craft are real, but we don't know about the ETs, extraterrestrials or occupants, the creators of these craft. Well, that just doesn't stand up to reason at all. The
How can
craft
you
came from somewhere.
how can you have
Someone
these
engineered
craft
them. They're
without
clearly
someone
engineered.
creating
So
them?
what did that? And there mum's the word on that. Well, that's the really interesting part of the whole story. If you think about it, we want to know who's driving these things, right? And
Yeah.
that's where the metaphysicists come in, and also just plain old experiencers, plain old people who were just minding their own business. And when they were plucked up like an ant off the sidewalk by an inquisitive youth with a magnifying glass and put into a lab somewhere and probed throughout, and then returned more or less into their own timeline, perhaps with some physical evidence in terms of marks on their bodies, certainly repressed memories that tend to boil over, and a lot of emotional duress. This is very typical of this kind of episode. And this is why I think the military, US military, came out with, well, yeah, the hardware are real, therefore we can validate the sightings of all our military personnel, past, present, and future, that they're not crazy. Because if you start calling everybody crazy who believes in or has seen UFOs, there are so many vetted military personnel who fall into that category. They can't all be crazy. I mean, if they are, we're in big trouble as a nation. Big trouble.
Well, that
right?
And it's going to cost the VA a lot of money because they're going to have to say these people all have psychological things wrong with them, and they're going to have to be treated. And there's
It's
another bill
inhumane,
for
frankly. It's no way to treat our armed forces,
Oh,
our service
it's
people.
awful.
It's
It's
shameful,
awful.
quite honestly. It's shameful.
Yeah.
And we, the people, have been lied to. Did you hear what my voice did? The people? We, the people, have been lied to for 75 years plus. And this is the biggest conspiracy on the planet. People have called me crazy to report it and talk about it. It lost me my job. at one point. This is so controversial, so taboo, and it's so weird now that it's that talking about the craft is okay. When a lot of us who have researched the topic so long, decades and decades and decades, myself included, understand that ETs got human beings started on reverse engineering ET craft. And they showed up after we started nuking the planet, top surface especially, because you just can't have unregulated nuclear devastation going on. It rends, it rips the time-space continuum.
Isn't it every
disturbs our
time
neighbors in other dimensions and such? So we can't have that. We're not good cosmic neighbors blowing off the nukes. So that's
isn't
when
it
they
every
showed up.
time we get close to nuclear war, that's when these things start showing up even more and more?
Yeah, they're very
Yeah.
concerned about that. They have a hands-off policy, the prime directive, but this is one case where it's not. They've already made very clear to world governments that nukes are dangerous and we shouldn't be messing around with them, especially for weaponry. This is very clear to human beings in the top levels of decision making. So why do they persist? Good question. One I don't know the answer to, but the beings can. So the beings are not. It's not clear that they can just tap. They have the ability to tap into anyone's mind and run you around like a puppet. But I think the prime directive prohibits them from doing that unless it's really last case. But what they can do and what they have done is demonstrate their superior technological power and abilities by taking US and probably foreign nuclear installations offline. And that's a shocking thing. Another chapter in my book, Malmstrom Air Force Base, one of many Air Force bases in the United States that have been disabled by UFOs, where they've got troops stationed up on the topsoil, looking around, checking for aerial threats. They see craft coming, they're pissing their pants. They call it in, and all the action is in a silo, a two-person silo, who are officers down there.
Hey,
And so
Gene,
they had an officer whistleblower, Robert Salas, who has written voluminously about a series of episodes that took place during March of that year.
I have one more question for you before we get to your story. So at the end of my story, they said, as of now, as far as we know, there has been no contact with the UFO that appeared over this military base at Camp Wilson. And the officials at Camp Wilson have yet to make any public comments. I think it's kind of odd that they chose to say, as far as we know. So does that mean that they may have made contact with this ship?
What do they mean by contact?
I don't. It just says, as far as we know, there was no
There's already
contact
been
with
contact.
this
Remember,
UFO.
the contact of the various kinds. Vallée, wasn't it? Jacques Vallée came up with the rating system. Close encounters of the various kinds. So close encounter of the third kind is face to face. Close encounter of the first kind is visual sighting, and close encounter of the second kind, I believe, is seeing occupants, but not interfacing with them. When you begin to interface with the occupants, that's third contact. And when you begin to, I think, telepath with them and stuff like that, get really chummy with them, fourth kind. It goes up to fifth or sixth kind, as I recall, but the higher levels are much more rare, as you would expect. But in terms of visual sighting, there are many, 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 many. And another thing interesting with the new program as of 2020 in coming out of the Pentagon and related military branches is that they act as if they have no prior records of any sightings, which is ridiculous. We have volumes and volumes of sightings to the point where why do we even need any more? Why do we particularly care about what happened last month or last week with a training exercise off the coast of California or wherever it was? I mean, these are so common now if you're into UFO research that, okay, fine. How much proof do we need, really? And I asked this of a MUFON state director in Colorado many years ago. Why are we still? Why do you MUFON bother to collect and send to Washington these reports? Don't we have enough information by now to be declarative that UFOs exist? And he said, basically, he's like, well, you're a peon. You don't understand these things. We take all the raw data, we send it off to Washington, where scientists analyze it. Okay. Well, they have no conclusions. They're clueless. And every time an administration changes, a new bureaucracies arise, and more millions and billions and trillions of dollars are sent down that rabbit hole of UFO misinformation. We have now misinformation. We've had part of disclosure, the craft are real, but it's not the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Far from it. So why are we being misinformed? Eh, your guess is as good as mine, but part of it is to relieve the psychological pressure of these military personnel who've had to keep it buttoned up or fear serious reprisals from the least of which is losing their job.
Yeah.
Then their benefits, then their family is targeted, their pets, their car, everything. There are reports. Phil Schneider talked, as I recall, talked about being followed on the highway and shot at. His tire
Oh,
shot out. This is not uncommon. The CIA has a program of escalation. They start with verbal threats, and if that doesn't work, then they start to demonstrate their power. And if that doesn't work, they'll kill you. It's called
I've
assassination.
heard
And they rub
stories.
people out. This is
Yeah.
common knowledge. I'm not making this up. Common knowledge on the CIA website, basically. And how many people have actually gone to the CIA website and looked up something like UFOs? There's a lot of documentation there, too. You don't need to label people and name call to have an informed opinion about stuff you don't know much about if you can ask the right questions of the right people. And when the Pentagon talks, the CIA is listening, you can be sure, right? They're waiting for their orders, which
Oh, yeah.
are to stop the undesirable press. So, how come the citizen scientists and the lay observers are not being given the same kind of press and treatment as the military observers? When will that day come?
it's not.
What do you got for us this week, Gene?
Well, if you care to share the screen, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag.
All right.
Earlier this year, in fact, it was the last day of March, but this year, the last day of March this year, I wanted to give a very clever, instead of a stock report for crops, a first quarter crop report. It was going to be a first quarter crop circle report. Okay, but further research showed we hadn't had a crop circle yet in 2023, and it's because, guess what? They're formed in crops, and it's too soon for the grain to have grown. So that was on me.
Okay.
And if you're sharing, yeah, there you go.
Yep.
And I can make this, I think I can make this big. Yeah, here we go. Big, big, big. Bigger is better. This was an image captured by Matthew Rose. Hats off to Matthew Rose, who very cleverly and in a timely fashion took a suite of pictures.
Oh,
Picture
wow.
change.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, picture change.
That's incredible.
It is incredible, and let me give you while you absorb this, give you a few stats. This is the first crop circle of the 2023 season. It's located at Broad Hinton, Wilts. That's Wiltstown, Wiltstown County. Wiltshire. Sorry, not Wiltstown, Wiltshire. Wiltshire County, which is Crop Circle Central, Wiltshire County. It's 180 feet across, approximately 180 feet. So, how long is a football field?
100 yards.
Yeah, 100 yards, which is 300 feet.
Yeah.
So this is over half of a football field in length, over half. So to the right from the zero to the, help me. I don't do football. It's big, people. It's big.
It's big. Yeah.
It's big. Now,
So,
just
is
to
it-
show you how big, just how big is big. This is how big. These are
Oh, wow.
trees.
It looks like it has some layers
Trees.
to it too.
These are
It
buildings.
does.
These are buildings. This is the sky. These are clouds. These are tractor lines, tram lines. I talked about them before when I talked about crop circles because I can't talk enough about crop circles. Love crop circles. These are tram lines or tractor lines. They are about 12 feet across. Usually, that's a standard width for tractors. Now, tractors vary. Some are bigger, some are smaller. But as you know, just 12 feet. That's what 12 feet is 12 feet.
Mhm.
So somebody's saying, well, somebody could have walked out there and smushed all this stuff down and done all this. Humans could have done this. Well, humans could have done this, but can they do this kind of thing, where we're seeing. Can you see my pointer?
Yeah, it looks like they're
Can you
woven
see
together and stuff.
the directionality of the laying down of the crop?
Which
So
you've shown us in other pictures too, Gene, in the
right. So
previous week.
here's the deal. This part right here is crop standing up. We
Okay.
can see the cereal heads.
Yep.
Okay. And the reflection of light is different depending on how the crop is smushed, how it's flattened. And so when it's flattened in a certain way, it gives us dark green. It's kind of like color by number.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see this color is
Yep.
when it's sideways like this from this perspective at least. And in other words, it's a stalk that's been laid down flat, and there's a cereal grain, a bushy grain, a tuft at the top. And then and so this is untouched, but the whole interior is whorled. I love that word, WHORLED. It's whorled, which means spun and twisted at the same time.
Wow.
Crazy, right? Crazy. So I'm not saying a human couldn't do all this. And furthermore, by the way, if this is a true crop circle, and not by true, I mean unexplainable, rather than human made. And the only way really to tell is to be there at ground zero, looking at it up close and personal, because a human is going to invariably break the stalks. It's hard to bend them like this without breaking unless they're heated, as with a microwave. And this effect has been likened unto a microwave effect because the stalks are heated. The joints pop like popcorn because they have water inside, and they explode basically. So we have bending rather than breaking, exploding joints, discoloration, as in burn marks, basically, or scorch marks. A lot of stuff that you don't see when you drag a board with ropes across cereal crops. And there's been a lot of side by side comparisons of this. You don't have to take my word for it. But look how complex this is. It's a geometric pattern, which is one of the classes of crop circles. It is, in a sense, pictorial, but basically, analysts would say it's a member of the geometric shapes and of the class of sacred geometry. It's a sacred geometric shape. And if you follow Gamble, I'm trying to remember his first name, the son of Gamble of Procter and Gamble, he started the Thrive movement, and they have a movie, Thrive, What Will It Take? What will it take to save the planet, basically? And this is 20 years old or 30 years old, this movie now, but I recommend it highly. And you'll totally, if you are into this thinking at all, you will want to get hip to the Thrive movement and go on with this further. He's working with engineers and metaphysicists who have intuitively built 3D models that show such a formation as this spinning and rotating in a torus, a toroidal field. A torus is a donut. Okay, so it's round, but it's three-dimensional. It has curved sides, and it has an empty center. So that's a toroid. A bundt cake is the same kind of a shape. It has an empty hole in the center, if you know what that is. But most people know what a donut is, a hole in the center, right? So here we have the hole in the center, in fact, and we have, imagine these were propeller blades or windmill blades, just using the imagination, or sails on a sailboat even. They look rather that way. They look aerodynamic to me as an engineer type of person. And that this would be the front edge, and this is a delta shape. And I wrote a chapter in my book on Kenneth Arnold's sighting 2 weeks before the Roswell crash, and this was in the vicinity of Mount Rainier in Washington State. He saw spaceships he saw unidentified flying objects that were shaped just like one of these. Delta shape. This was the front, and they curved to a point in the back. This is an aerodynamic design for aircraft and kites. Came out of kites.
It looks just like one of the little pinwheels that we used to blow.
Yeah, it's like a pinwheel.
Or it looks like a fan, like a giant fan they would use for a hovercraft.
Yeah. And so is ET, if these come from ET, because nobody knows where these come from, and furthermore, nobody knows for sure, are they created from above, as in pulled up, or are they flattened down from above? There's one theory that they're actually, that Mother Earth, Gaia, is pushing these out through energy fields and stuff. This is crazy. I mean, there are so many theories about this, and one is just, I don't even have the adjectives to describe, and I don't want to sway people overly much. I get excited. Okay, the whole phenomenon excites me, whether it's Mother Earth, or visitors from afar, or our own governments mind melding us, mind fucking us. Let's just say it. I at least they're very fine art, right?
Yeah.
But are they engineering designs to nudge us toward free energy? That's what Foster is, his first name, Foster Gamble, and his wife, his lovely wife. They're stumping through the Thrive movement and other engineering outlets to harness free energy. Think Tesla, Nikola Tesla. Now, a lot of interleaving when you get into this topic. And who would think it would all come from smushed celery? Sorry, smushed cereal grains. Cereal grains.
There are some guys out there that are trying to recreate the Tesla coil. So it's interesting. I think that whole line of work and that research is fascinating myself.
I've met several people who said, I drove to this event in a car that has a Tesla coil. And of course, they never show it.
Yeah.
Big talk.
And when I was in Glastonbury, England, I visited the Chalice Well, and there's a bench in a garden near the Chalice Well, and supposedly two of the Earth's ley lines cross at that particular bench, and people say that they can feel that when they sit there.
Yeah. Some people are more attuned than others as well. The kinds of people you'd expect, mediums and psychics, but you just never know who will have sensations or impressions, feel things. There's definitely magnetic alterations going on inside crop circles, as I said before. Just a few more factoids. Last year, the first crop circle was reported on April 24th at Crabwood in Hampshire County. And that was an early circle that was in a crop of oilseed rape, which is what we know of as canola. Okay. So according to Temporary Temple's website, the experts on all things crop circles, especially in England, we do not have circles in canola every year. So some years the season will not start until the barley is tall enough to hold a circle, which can be any time from May until early June. And the second circle in 2022 at Hippenscombe did not occur until the end of May on the 22nd. So this year we had a cold spring in the UK, and the crops are behind where they often are. And as of the 23rd of May, when this webpage was updated, they were awaiting the first crop circle of the summer. We have just seen it right before the end of May. So most UK crop circles occur in the counties of Wiltshire and Hampshire, but they do happen in lesser numbers countrywide and in other countries around the world, I will add. In the early season, April and May, numbers are few, but this gradually builds up as the summer moves on, and at the height of the season, which is late July and August, in other words, harvest, several circles can appear on one night, and they're all ginormous, 150 feet, 300 yards, whatever, the length of a football field, or several sometimes. I mean, ginormous. Now, what's interesting too is that many farmers find this, well, they want to report this as crop damage to the insurance company.
Right.
And
'Cause
yet
they can't sell that stuff.
They can't explain it as humans. And so the crop circle season ends with harvest in mid to late August, and the slate is wiped clean for another year. So in the UK, the first crop to mature is canola or oilseed rape, and then barley, and then wheat. And the circles seem to follow this maturation process, with the first circles appearing in brilliant yellow of the canola fields and finishing in mature golden wheat. And from time to time, they appear in other crops, including linseed, borage, oats, and even beans. And that's my report on the first crop circle of 2023. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Jean.
Jet
It's
Fuel Gene
fascinating.
out.
All right. Before we head off, I want to thank our sponsor, High Harvest, the only place for your personal care and attention and your needs. Jean, you got anything before we head out?
I just want to thank Sin for stepping up and helping out.
Thank you for having me. I've
Yeah,
enjoyed this.
I thought you were awesome. I know our listeners did too.
Same
Oh,
here.
thank you.
Dreamy
Thank you.
Dave, it's nice to have you in the pilot seat helping
Yeah,
out.
it went better than I thought. I'll say that.
Well, when you got good help,
Yeah.
you know.
And I found the intro, so if I ever have to do this again, we'll have our little intro. Sin, do you have anything you want to share?
No, let's just send some well wishes out to Mike if he is feeling under the weather.
Yes,
All
Since
right.
that darling man just needs a little praying, I'm sure.
Gene, I don't know if you heard, there's a theory that Mike is on assignment somewhere, working on some kind of awesome story for us, or the puppets have been angry that they haven't gotten any airtime lately, and they allegedly may have been waiting for him and jumped him outside the studio.
Oh, I hate it when that happens, but I
We're
totally get
waiting
it.
we're waiting for Buddy to review the
Don't
footage.
even neglect the
present
puppets.
the evidence.
Bad things will happen.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot my shout out. Hi, Audra. Good to see you.
Yes, Audra. How are you? Gene, you want to hold up your book one more time?
Sure, you know it. On Amazon.
On Amazon.
On Amazon. My birthday's coming up. This would be a great birthday present for somebody else.
You know what we can do for your birthday, Gene? We can bump your book up and get it into that #1 slot in
Ooh.
various categories. That would be awesome if people
And you know
could
what
do
I
that.
forget to add, Dave? Thanks so much. I forget how people can contact me. First name, last name. Gene Broida at yahoo.com. How hard is that to remember? If you want to reach out and love me, go for it. If you're snarky or mean, forget about it. Don't want to hear from you.
Hey, forget about it.
Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Only nice people invited.
See, if Mike was here, we could say the word Italian and everyone would have to drink.
Right.
We miss you, Mike. Come back to us.
Cheers, Mike.
Yeah. Feel better. All right. So for Jet Fuel Gene Broida, for Sin Shrader Hill, I'm Dreamy David Barr. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget, tomorrow night is Legit Paranormal Clips. So be sure to check that out. It's where various paranormal groups submit their evidence for Mike and Buddy and other guests to review and give their opinion on. It's fascinating. So I highly recommend checking that out tomorrow night at 8:05. And again, thanks for joining us. Have a great week, everybody.